SilverSeek. Chris, welcome on in. How are you today?
Pretty good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. And then we have Peter Spina, voted by some of the women of our audience as one of our best looking guests we've had on the show yet. Looking kind of Brad Pitt, like he's ready to go there today.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Peter, how are you, sir?
Hey, Chris, great to be back on, and great to see you guys. Just finished a dinner over here, but nice, well fed and ready to go.
Well, we got all the time zones covered, West Coast, Prague. I'm here in Minnesota where the liberal sign and COVID rules are being applied forcefully. You can't go 5 feet without being instructed of how to properly cover your nose when you sneeze. But fortunately, I think most of these silver investors in here can handle that. And what they would really like to know is how to pick some great silver stocks. And perhaps, Mr. Silver Guru, you could kick it off and explain. And I know we have a lot of people who are new to this, so we talk a lot about silver. Some people look to the silver stocks because you can get leverage. And David, perhaps just to start things off, you could explain that in a simple way so people can understand. He's pulling some of his silver stocks out there. He's got the stash.
You bet. So first off, I'd just like to, again, thank you, Chris and Yara, for putting this together. I'd start off with the Silver Manifesto. Chris did a great deal of work on that, and there's a chapter in there, how to pick a mining company. So anyone that really wants to dig, I'd say fairly deep, there's a whole chapter Chris wrote on how to pick a mining company. So I would start there if you want to DIY, do it yourself. And I thought about this question actually quite a bit between, when I first appeared here and now. And, the honest truth is on the junior side, certainly someone with, the capabilities that Chris has and constant vigilance, which it takes to separate the wheat from the chaff. But, what have I done, and before, Chris and I worked together. And really, it's being in the industry so long and knowing the right people. I mean, I get information that other people just don't get. Now, I'm not trying to sell a newsletter. I'm just telling you an answer to the question. How do you do it? You just stick around long enough to make a lot of connections and network with a lot of people, and you find out things usually ahead of time that other people don't know. I'll go back to this company that we started with that was a mobile mill. It morphed into kind of a technology stock. And I remember giving a lecture in the Vancouver show, and this guy was all mad at me for not giving it out for free. And there wasn't even a symbol on the stock yet. But that's how these people can be, It's like they want everything for free. And, did I have inside track? Yeah. Why? Because the person that put this idea together had done a company that was in the Morgan Report on the junior side, bought out by First Majestic, and they had a pretty good track record. So I don't want to dominate everything, but really I would say if you think you can sit there and just pick them, randomly, good luck. If you don't have somebody helping you, like, what Peter and Chris are going to be doing here with their newsletter, what I do with my newsletter, and you can randomly look really good in the stage of a market, like when it started in 2000, 2003. Everything went up that had silver and gold in the name, and it will happen again at the end of this cycle. But in between, you better either know what you're doing or get some help. So enough said. Back to you guys.
Sorry, I had my mute button hit there. David, I appreciate that. And Chris, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, so I'll kind of add on what David said, maybe more focus on the people you want. You should really do exhaustive research on, the key executive positions, chairman of the board, so CEO, COO, VP of exploration, chairman, and, look at their past successes. People like Ross Beatty with Pan American and a host of other companies attract great management. And you want people, you invest in people when you're buying mining stocks. You really are. And good management will maximize the value of those assets. So you really want to do your homework on that. That is the most important part, obviously. Then you want to go look at the assets, assess the potential, look at technical reports if there are any. And unfortunately, most of the good silver companies are in Mexico. So if you want the exposure to the best deposits and some of the best companies, you're going to have to be a little overweight Mexico, which might scare some.
Peter?
Yeah, I think, I started off with my first investments into silver companies really in the early 2000s when I got into silver because of David Morgan. I've been following David for almost 20 years now, and made my first silver purchase when it was about $4, and then started to invest more into the junior companies, junior miners. And a lot of them at the time in the early 2000s were starting up in Mexico. It was a really unique time with the opening up of Mexico to foreign investors. Mexico had been closed off until the 90s. And then here these companies came in and established themselves and brought in a lot of capital and did a lot of work to develop a lot of different projects. And it was a very successful period to be investing in Mexican mining companies back then through the cycle. And now I think we're returning back into this exciting cycle where you can do very well. And Mexico is obviously one, like Chris says, is one of the places you must consider. And I still like investing in there. There have been some questions about some tax issues and some issues. They raised some taxes some years ago, but it still remains one of the best places in the world to find and mine silver. And I'm pretty heavily invested in Mexican mining companies myself.
David, any thoughts on Mexico versus any other jurisdictions, ones that you like, ones that you're cautious of, or just things that there's a set answer but might want to be aware of and think about when they're looking at some of the different projects?
Sure. I mean, you can't really be a silver investor without exposure to Mexico. I mean, it's really that simple. There's so much there, and it's so prolific in the silver mining industry. But it's also, you need to be cautious. Look, there's no guarantees in life on anything. And, a lot of people are concerned with the big picture, which I think I'm going to get to. Laura Stein just sent me an idea of what she thought was the most important part of the report last month, which I'm willing to read. It's a little bit off topic, but I think it puts into perspective that, mining is great, silver's great, all these things are important, but the big picture is where the heck are we in the overall global economy, which has been basically my main thesis. I mean, I drilled down from an illicit con game and why you need real money. But if you don't mind, guys, can I read this part of the Morgan report from last month? This actually came from David Smith. He says about Buffett making the purchase, and he says this is the ultimate green light for the sector. It's now been legitimized in the canyons of Wall Street, whereas before asset managers feared getting fired for owning gold stocks. They will now fear getting fired for not owning gold stocks because of Warren Buffett's action. The gold bull market now sits at the cusp of the public point of recognition. I cannot emphasize how significant it is. Buffett has been the dam holding back the great flood of investment dollars into the gold bull market. As long as Buffett steered clear, the lemming institutional money managers would avoid this sector. The dam broke Friday afternoon after the market closed when Berkshire Hathaway's 13F filing was publicly released, revealing he had bought $500 million of Barrick last quarter. He's now given tacit permission that the average investor needs to own some gold stocks. Don't think people won't notice. And then he went on to something tied together, blah, 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 blah. My view is this is the opportunity I've sensed for my entire adult life. All the mistakes I've made, all the accumulated knowledge I have, all the market cycles I've witnessed and prepared for is this moment. If I play my cards right, I can move into a different economic class. I may not be into rap music, but Eminem got it right in his song "Lose Yourself." So I hope you guys are okay with me indulging there. But that's the big picture on the mining stocks.
I would be more okay if you felt like giving us your Eminem rap during this second call. I'll throw in an ounce of silver for that, a copy of the big silver. David, if you give us Eminem, I'll give you my 5-ounce silver.
I'm not gonna go there. I'll pass.
We gotta get a 1,000-ounce bar to get David to start rapping. Chris, any thoughts on that?
So yeah, the Buffett thing, very important. The only issue I have is there are others at Berkshire that have decision-making power that don't have to get the go-ahead from him. So I'm not entirely convinced on that. However, Buffett announced that they invested in 5 Japanese companies, primarily metals and mining. Of note is Sumitomo, which produces a good amount of silver. So he's getting exposure that way. I have a feeling that he's gonna. That's really what he wanted. He liked the Berkshire investment. That this is going to continue for at least a few more quarters. He's going to announce more 13F filings about holdings and several companies. But the problem is, the treasury there is so big that he can only invest in the biggest companies, and still he can't really allocate a high percentage because he'll move, a $30 billion stock, or he has the power to do so. Yeah. So, and this is like the perfect storm for precious metals. We have our debt is out of control. Deficit spending hit a record. If you include the off-budget items, it's close to $4 trillion. And there's going to be more stimulus packages, more QE, probably yield curve control. So there's just so many catalysts on the horizon. Then we also got the elections. So, if you're not invested in mining stocks, while there might be a correction in the very near term, you want to have some exposure at least and not try to catch the bottom, because the bottom won't be much further down if there is one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jeremy Powell seems to be going out of his way to guarantee that. I mean, that's quite a 6-month stretch. Quantitative easing, unlimited quantitative easing, 0% interest rates forever. And then when that's not enough, let's say 2% inflation isn't big enough. I think I actually heard him say there was an inflation deficit, which always makes me giggle. And one of you guys, I'm not remembering exactly who it was at the moment, mentioned that, we're getting to that point where it's like, for a while, fund managers were saying, well, I don't want to invest in silver stocks because then if it goes bad, and I'm the guy out there that is the only one doing it. Yet it seems like that's changing. That certainly matches my impression and recollection of Wall Street. Peter, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Are we, as perhaps childish as it sounds, is Wall Street really being run by, I'll invest in it when these guys do, and how that's playing out in silver?
Well, it's definitely a herd mentality. And my main theme for the last few years has been this is one of the best opportunities to invest in mining stocks. That in the last 25 some years I've been following the sector. We've been grinding through this bottom phase for the last years, and just in the last year and a half, we've been kind of coming off of this bottom, and the juniors and the miners have been hated on. No one wants to own them. No one wants to touch them. But then when things start to run, people want to join, and then they start to see the price go up, and they get interested, and the momentum comes into play. But fundamentally, it's not hard now to be buying a silver miner where, several months ago, last year, silver in the teens, a lot of these companies, they're cutting capital costs, trying just to survive mode. And their balance sheets were being drained, and their cash positions were weak. The treasuries were weak. And now silver's at $25 to $30. These guys are making several dollars, $10+ an ounce. So, this is a totally different game now. Wall Street's going to notice very quickly. It takes some leaders like Buffett and others, or Berkshire Hathaway, and these guys to start buying for others to come in. But they're going to see the quarterly earnings coming out, especially now as we get into the next quarters, because Q2 was affected, especially for the Mexican silver companies. It was a horrible quarter with the lockdowns. But all of a sudden, the risks on these companies has been shifting, and the companies have been lagging. A lot of these companies were trading at these silver prices. Like if silver's still trading at $20 an ounce, not at $25 or $30 an ounce, and it's a whole different situation now. So for me, it's really easy to be buying silver miners. I've been buying some of the pullbacks here, but I'm almost about 100% invested. I have been for the last year and a half. I've been, had some cash position for a while, but back late 2018, early 2019, I went 100% in. A little uncertain, how long is it going to take for this to fully turn around? And now it's not even a question. It's very easy now to be buying these companies. And the juniors have had a run. Some of them have popped. I think the silver miners, the larger ones, are easier to buy, less risk. They have been changing their risk profile. The balance sheets are improving dramatically. So this is all going to get noticed. And I think the first maybe inning or two is over, but we still have a lot ahead of us. And as every day these guys mine at these silver prices, they're going to just look better and better and better. So it's easier and easier to own them.
Yeah, and something you mentioned there, Peter, Chris, perhaps maybe you can take this one. I mean, it's not rocket science if the mines were shut down and the price was lower versus in the second quarter versus the third quarter, the mines are open and the price is higher, that you're probably going to see better numbers in the third quarter. But it almost feels as if Wall Street's waiting till the number is actually on the screen to say, oh, wow, these guys made a lot of money last quarter, which perhaps to me sounds a little unusual. But Chris, is that amazingly enough how it's actually playing out, or how do you see that?
I think that's exactly it. However, I do think there are, when Q3 numbers, I mean, we haven't had a full quarter of these much higher metal prices, because you have to remove Q2, and no one has really seen the earnings potential, the free cash flow generation that will change. However, it might take a couple of quarters, because I know there are probably a lot of people that think this is the top, and gold and silver, after 2011, many people are very hesitant to enter the market. So, it's kind of a waiting game. And like Peter said, most gold miners are trading with an implied gold price about $1,650, $1,700 an ounce, and silver about $20, $21 an ounce maybe. And like Peter also said, we really didn't see big moves in the silver miners from 19 to what we hit 29, I think, at the top, short-term top. And now it's 26 and change. But so I think that's going to take a couple quarters. But that also gives you more time to buy at big discounts.
Yeah, and Chris, along those lines, I get it. A lot of people don't like waiting 9 years for something they buy to move, and that's why I think it takes a rather specific mental mindset and profile to be able to invest in silver. Yet, I mean, that's how it moves. It sat there silver sat there for $20, under $20 for 4 years. And then in a month, it went up to 28. But if you wait until after it goes up, it's too late. So it's kind of, you almost have to be able to buy when things seem low and stick it out, or else, and I understand people may or may not like that, but I try and focus on what is and how we can intelligently respond. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, investors, they don't like buying at bottoms. They like buying at tops. They like buying higher. So it really takes those investors who truly believe in gold and silver, that they understand the macro picture and why those metals are so important to have exposure to. And I don't think, not enough people are educated on that. I mean, academia, tries to brainwash you into thinking, these ridiculous economic theories are correct. Even though they've all been proven wrong, they still continue to do so. So I think it's, a lack of understanding that has caused that. And, for those who really believe in the metal and are willing to have patience, you were able to buy a lot of quality silver stocks at extremely depressed levels. So, that's kind of my take on that.
That makes a lot of sense. And Peter, since you're in Czech Republic, is that an American thing, the buy high, sell low mentality that is the inherent strategy baked in on chasing momentum? Do Europeans follow that same methodology, or how does
the Czechs are a bit more conservative, like the German mindset, so they don't usually don't talk too much about their investments, actually. But they're not in. They haven't had the education and an exposure to the equity side of the sector. They tend to buy physical out here, and they store it and save it because they've been through some very difficult history, monetary history, economic situations. So they, especially the older generation, they understand that quite well. Just one thing that Chris was saying about the sector, the mining equities. One of the themes that I was trying to kind of reiterate over and over the last year or two is that the game has changed. The rules are different, and gold and silver bugs are very easily shaken out. Like Chris was saying in 2011, and then in 2016 we had this run up, and then the rally collapsed, and there was just a lot of disappointment and a lot of just depression in this sector. People have just lost faith, and it's a lot easier to be a new investor in this silver mining stocks right now than it is to have been through it for the last 10 years, because you're just become so skittish. And I think it's very easy to shake out a lot of the silver and gold bugs right now. And I think that's I've been trying to support them to keep a longer term picture that there's times when this market moves, and we saw this when silver broke through 1921. It happens very quickly, and you're either in the market or you're just going to watch it just take off, and you're not going to be able to even really chase it. It's a quick reset almost. So I think the mining stocks, some of them are going to go through these cycles now, or some of them will start to do revaluations. We've seen Fortuna Silver recently starting to make a move. You don't need the silver and gold price to keep running at these levels. Even if you just had the belief that the bottom is in, and that we start looking more at these as a new market. Even if silver around $25 to $30 is amazing. If it goes above 30, goes at 40 or 50, I mean, it just, you really start to look at incredible numbers. So I think the rules now is you buy the dips. There's going to be some volatility. You can try to trade it, but it's going to be very difficult. So it's better to have a long-term focus on the fundamentals, and don't sell your winners right away, because a lot of you tend to sell the winners for the losers, and reshift the portfolios. But let the winners run. Stick with the leaders in the sector.
That makes a lot of sense. Folks, start typing your questions in. I have one more here, and then I'll start taking your questions.
Just interject a little bit on top of what Peter said.
Yes, please.
So if you go back to the original market, and everybody there is too young but me. So the best performance on the gold stocks actually was after the 850 peak of January, because as Peter outlined, even though it pulled back, and you have to look at a chart, but I got it pretty well memorized. I think gold was holding pretty well above 600. You're looking at $600 gold in those days. which was huge. I don't know what that'd be equivalent today, but several times what gold's at right now. And so the margins were just huge, like Peter just outlined. So you actually were better off holding your gold stocks past the gold peak. If you want to sell them at the tippy top, you had about 6 months because the earnings were just out of this world. And of course, if you know the gold market, fell back from that point and, had a big bear market. But so it's really kind of hard in a way to determine what's your best opportunity to sell because it's a different dynamic. You're buying a company that has earnings. If the earnings have increased substantially, even though maybe the price of the metal itself has fallen back somewhat, it could be such a delta like Peter outlined so well. You're looking at a $10 margin. What if that margin, what if silver goes to 45 and your margin is 25? What if it goes to 100 and your margin is 75? Can you imagine? And I've thought about it probably as much as anybody, but you guys got younger brains than mine. But, I think these companies at some point, depending on how long it stays at these, higher prices, might almost be forced to pay dividends. I mean, they have such cash flow. It's like, what are we going to do? So it could, I'm not saying would, develop into a situation where it was similar to the market that, when I was young, where the Kafirs, the South Africans, paid dividends that were commensurate with, 20%, 15%, those type of things. I'm not forecasting that. I'm just, this is a lot of ifs. If the price goes that high, if it stays that high for a while, but there's no disputing what Peter said. These margins are incredible, are very juicy right now. The prices haven't caught up to it. And there's probably more ahead. I agree with it.
Well, I appreciate that. And man, there's so many questions I want to ask, but I will get to the audience questions, especially it's kind of interesting when you do a show or a conference and you don't exactly know who's out there. But I had wondered, we all know Ben Bernanke doesn't understand gold. None of his friends were able to explain it to him either. And I thought, gee, well, maybe if he logs into SilverFest this weekend, he could get some clarity. And as you can see in the chat room, Ben Bernanke is here. And Ben asks each speaker, please pick one silver miner stock they like right now. I'll give a little disclaimer. Obviously, these three distinguished guests here aren't speaking to someone individually they don't know. So this is not legal financial advice. With that said, if you can share your opinion, and if you care to talk about a stock that you like, and Mr. Silver Guru, we will start with you.
I like Mag Silver.
Yeah, that's a hard one. And Peter McGaw, that's investing in quality people. Yeah, that's a great one. My top one is in Fortuna Silver, which is actually turning more into a gold company now as they're starting up a huge gold asset down in Argentina. It's been taking a while. It's taken a lot of capital, but that thing is going to be producing monster amount of cash flow. So it's hard to find a pure silver miner these days. So there's always a mix, but Fortuna is my top position at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to go with Mag. I love it. I'll just say an insider at Mag sat down with David Morgan and myself, 2 years ago, and told us something the market really doesn't know. Basically, production starting after a year 4 or 5 is going to be a lot higher than it says in the they only released a PEA, but I guess they have an internal PFS. But so anyway, my pick would be Silvercrest Mines. They keep identifying new veins. It's open in many directions. They're continually finding the highest grade discoveries every few months. And they keep reporting the best drill holes that the company has drilled. And there could be a big catalyst coming up with the results of the feasibility study in late Q3, early Q4. And just on a side note, there's one silver stock that David and Peter and I have exposure to. It's risky, but it's Hycroft mining, and there is a ton of silver. Once they finish the expansion project, if they do so, and execute very well, it'll produce 10 million ounces of silver a year, plus 250,000 ounces of gold a year. So that's another one, and this in Nevada, so you get a little bit out of Mexico.
Yeah, Hycroft is an interesting one. I followed that from the mid 90s. Was one of the first stocks I bought was Grange's, which became Vista Gold, and then they spun out their Nevada projects into Allied Nevada, which ran the Hycroft project out there in Nevada for some years. But then they got overextended, big expansion, a lot of debt, and then the top of the market, things got crushed. But it's interesting to see it come around, and like Chris was saying. We've been looking at that one. I've been picking away as well at that one. It's a big silver miner it'll be in the coming years.
All righty. Well, I appreciate that, folks. We have a question here from Leftist Tears Investing. What are the next upcoming events that will affect the price of silver the most from a short-term option trade perspective? So he lists the FOMC meeting, which I personally can't. I'm excited for next week. I mean, after QE, unlimited QE, 0% rates, then inflation targeting, whatever that means. I don't know what else he could do to top that. Maybe he'll just take his pants off at the next press conference. I don't know how you blow that out of the water. But David, so we have quarterly reports, stock market crash, stimulus, elections. I can't even believe we have an election to top onto all this. What do you think is going to move the silver market in the short term?
Well, I'm going to revivify the question. You just did it for me. Yeah, the short term, I'm just going to do a wild ass guess. I'll just say the FOMC meeting, but I want to expand on that to the longer term because, investing is different than speculating or trading options and futures is much different than, buy and hold. So the big picture is currency crisis. The more people that wake up to the fact that silver's money, and I know Alistair McLeod spoke after I did, and I was able to catch a little bit before I had to run out the door. But he's right. As I've said 1,000,000 times, well, 500,000 times, silver's been money more often, more transactions for long periods of time than gold by far. It is the monetary metal of history. That's indisputable if you look for the facts. If you want to run on emotion, you can say gold is money and nothing else. That's fine. I don't care. The fact is that so as Chris said earlier in this discussion, why are we where we're at? It's because of education. People believe the BS, he didn't use that word, or those two letters that we're taught in academia, that these economic models that are so distorted actually work, and they don't. So the natural law of you can't get something for nothing, as that takes effect more and more, and it's happening at a more rapid pace all the time, more and more people will start to grasp that silver is a safe haven. That's what's really going to take the market further. And the late, great Michael Rupert, and I don't know if this is true or not, you can look it up on the internet, but it's called the 100 monkey theory. And it's about monkeys washing coconuts before they ate them. And one just randomly did it. But once it got to the 100, then even islands that were separate from the islands that started it started doing it. So there's a point, a tipping point, an inflection point, where all of a sudden you get that parabolic or that exponential expansion. And once that happens, you could take silver market, which is 0.05% of the total financial market, and move it to 1% of the financial market. 50-fold increase would make silver to be 1% of the entire financial structure of the planet. Think about it. If you can't think that far, then, exit the show. Sorry for the arrogance. I'll try to hold back. Back to you guys.
David, no holding back. And in fact, Federal Reserve jokes are welcomed and encouraged at this type of festival. I know it's a little different than traditional, but I don't know. I guess we get to make our own rules, and that's, I don't know, I like to think the advantage of seeing these things in advance. Although, David, You said something that I liked quite a bit. You mentioned silver as the safe haven. Now, again, I appreciate you guys bearing with me. I know I'm a little slow. I went to a government school. So I thought the U.S. dollar and the U.S. Treasury were the safe havens. And that's where what I learned in Wharton Business School with their fine Keynesian economic academic department there, that when there's times of chaos, that you just park your money in dollars, put it in a U.S. bank, ignore the fact that the Fed's balance sheet has skyrocketed to $7 trillion. God only knows what the real number is. You said silver as the safe haven. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Sounds nice to me.
Well, times such as these, and this isn't like a 40-year cycle, and others have said, at least in my opinion, strong opinion, this is one of those events that comes along like the book Collapse of Complex Societies. I mean, this is like the Byzantine Empire going down, or the Mayan Empire, and those weren't monetary based, they were agricultural based. But the point I'm making is simple. This is a worldwide global event that's going to disrupt everything we know. So going back to your question about the US dollar, well, that fits right into Exter's pyramid, which many I'm sure that are listening are aware of. And if you're not, Google it. But John Exter talked about the liquidity squeeze where people seek safety. And at the bottom of the pyramid is the metals, the money metals, gold and silver. I put silver in there. He didn't. He just was a gold only bug. But before that's the dollar. And I said that I was a big adherent to his idea, and I still am, and that there will be a run to treasuries and physical currency. And then that will start to wane, and that money will move into gold. So you'll see a point where you'll see gold and the US dollar both move up together. And so the people that adhere to the idea that gold moves opposite the dollar will be proven wrong. And that's already taking place. We're starting to see the run to gold. And I won't reread what I said about Buffett. I do want to read the last paragraph because I forgot to. So forgive me, folks. I'm past 65 these days. But that's my take on it. I think we're going to see more and more move into gold. Buffett, as I don't want to overemphasize, but Chris did a good job, and they're looking at other places to go. And, you know, you look at what it is, Chris, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1% of Berkshire's holdings to buy that much Barrick.
Yeah, I mean, it might even be less. I don't know. Yeah, it's a rounding error.
Yeah, it's
it really is.
So back to my last statement. I'll hand it back to you guys. So remember, I was talking about M&M. So I'll read the top paragraph. I'll blend it to the last one. So my view is that this opportunity I've sensed for my entire adult life, all the mistakes I've made, all the accumulated knowledge I have, all the market cycles I have witnessed, and prepared me for this moment. If I play my cards right, I can move into a different economic class. If I'm not into rap music, but Eminem got it right, his song Lose Yourself. If you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? You've got one shot. Don't miss your chance. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime.
Well, that's well said, David. I'm going to agree and slightly disagree, if I may, on that. Certainly seeing it as this silver move as something historic whenever it comes. Yeah, that's dominated the last 11 years of my life, certainly, especially the last 9, as I've been studying why the prices fell so much from 2011 highs. Although perhaps one thing I just feel might be worthwhile to point out, I used to see as it like, all right, I got to make sure I capture this. Although maybe having a little more perspective as the years have gone by, I would suggest that the type of comments and the way of looking at the markets that the three of you and the other guests we have here this weekend is going to serve people well. I mean, if you wanted to be a great investor, just figure out where the government's getting involved and figure out the counter effects of that, and that will always serve you well. So yes, I think we're all excited about silver, maybe gold a little bit too, platinum as well. But I think the stuff that people are learning here and from these guests going to serve you well in any market. So with that said, I have a question for my good friend Michael Rapsch here. Michael, it's great to see you logged on. Michael says, where do the panelists see the gold to silver ratio next year? How about we just call it next September, or if you have a particular time period, you can insert that. But Chris, where do you see any thoughts on the gold to silver ratio? Where do you see that going?
I think it go to 60, 55, and maybe even 50. I mean, it is really just a lot of this is what the Fed and the federal government are going to do with, the stimulus going forward, because they can accelerate the market, which of course would drive the both metals higher. And in a bull market, especially, we're past the early. I mean, we're probably in the third or fourth inning of this cycle, and in the early stages, silver underperforms, as we saw. It got up to GSR got up to 125. Now it's settling 70, 75, and as we progress, it should continue to fall as the market progresses. And we also have to remember that if a lot of the other major world economies are doing okay, they will still consume a lot of silver. So the industrial component is on top of the investment component, I think will really drive the gold to silver ratio down. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this we saw it at 10, 20, 25 to 1, something around there. And the reason is the mining rate is they mine about for every ounce of gold, I think they mine about 8.5, maybe 9 ounces of silver. There's the above ground inventories of gold are higher. The thing that is why it has such a premium is history, and because there's that's considered the most monetary metal, at least right now. But then if the silver gold price goes too high, people will scramble to get silver.
Peter.
I like what Laura Stein just mentioned in the chat. And I know Laura for many years.
Laura Stein,
about confiscation. The confiscation issues out there, and I talk a lot about capital controls, and that's a big issue coming up for everyone around the world. Depending where you are on different levels, it's already happening. But she mentioned gold confiscation. Silver hasn't been confiscated, so it has its nice advantage there. I like that comment. The ratio side, I think what Chris was saying, 50 to 60 in maybe a year from now, it's kind of hard to predict in the short term, but longer term, it's going to retest that prior level, was around low 30s from about 10 years ago, and then it could super spike, and silver price super spiking where the ratio goes below 20 again. That sounds possible. So, and that'll be an indicator that things are getting quite heated and overheated, and that might be actually a good sign to start shift. If you're too heavy in silver, then go back into gold. For me, it was going from gold into silver last year's when it was 80, 90. My gosh, I didn't think it would ever spike up to 130 or whatever it did here in March. That was absolutely an extreme. So it's volatile, but yeah, it seems to me that silver is gonna now really start outperforming gold. Like Chris just said, at first it's gold which outperforms, and then silver picks up, and then silver takes off to the races. And this tiny little market is just incapable of handling all the interest and capital that wants to flee and seek a safe haven, which like what David was saying, when people don't want to take risk anymore and they want somewhere to hide, you're not going to want to, why do you want to hold debt and all these other, what they taught you at Wharton Business School, this programming that they've taught everyone, hide in treasuries. My gosh, no, thank you. What's
risk?
That's a huge risk, exactly. Or the risk in silver and gold. That's something real. It's not a liability. So that's where I choose to store my value.
Yeah, and I say this somewhat trying to be funny, although it's darn true. I wonder what my finances would look like if I had saved going to Wharton and just bought a subscription to the Morgan Report, and someone had told me about SilverSeek 15 years ago. That would have been helpful. Although, at least in my defense, Greenspan actually spoke at our graduation. This was before I knew how silly most of the things he said was, but I didn't bother attending. She practiced my guitar that day, and I think was a better use of my time. We have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to fire. Maybe we can do some rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you questions which are probably impossible to be answered in 30 seconds to a minute. We'll do one question per guest here. So, David, let's start with you. I know this is not a quick question, but again, we've heard a lot of the mining companies talk about, when silver went from $17 to $18, how that was a huge difference, and it really made quite an impact for some of these companies. Can you in some way put in perspective, if that made a big difference, then I think probably we'll find out third quarter earnings that 18 to 27 or 28 would make an even more substantial difference. Is there any way you can put that in context for people?
I don't know if I can. I mean, it's self-evident. I mean, if you are at the margin and you go from being in the red to the black by a $1 move, and that would be a hypothetical company, but it probably occurred, then once you go beyond that point, you're getting, a huge increase. I mean, there's so many ways to look at mining companies. I mean, ones that are really underwater have the most leverage, meaning if they're all in sustaining costs are high, once the market goes, they actually got more leverage than one that's already producing at a profit. But you got to balance all that, knowledge, hypotheticals, what ifs with, risk reward profile. And I'd say, that's what we try to do here. Chris was instrumental in, keeping us on track in that. I'm a little older and got a different perspective. I don't want to lose anything back. I'm still willing to speculate, but not to the level that I was when I was, in my 20s. So anyway, I don't think I answered it. It's self-evident. I mean, the more the bigger the margin, the more the profit. It's pretty simple.
Well, I appreciate that. Chris, do you think you can handle a question? I think you're up to it, from the great Ronan Manley, who we saw this morning. Any views on core mining? He likes it. Are you familiar with them at all? And any thoughts you can share there?
Yeah, core, they're not one of my favorites. They do have some good assets. They do have what I think will be a great development project at these higher prices in La Precocia. However, when they acquired it, they didn't want to go with that mine plan. They thought they could do it open pit, so they're a little lost there. They do have the Palmarejo Mexican mine in Mexico, but they also, and the upside is you also get silver production from the U.S. and I can't remember if Core still owns Silvertip, and so potentially Canada. Core's not one of the ones I pay special attention to. I just in the past I really didn't like the management, so I've kind of just avoided that one.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Peter. I think you're up for the task of, if you have anything to say to Mike Brown, who says, "Tell me about it. I have 2 kids ready to go into debt for leftist colleges. Maybe instead of forking over 50 or 60, I can ask Andy Schechtman. He has a son in college now. I hear the numbers. I mean, no, there's only 1% inflation. College just going up 1% a year. Maybe he could get his kids into a nice silver miner portfolio, and then in 5 or 10 years they'll be rich instead of thinking about bankruptcy with their leftist degree." But I'm biased. Peter, what do you say?
Yeah, that's invest in your future by investing in something real. And unless they're getting a really specialized education in something technical, I don't think the reward on these $50,000 a year the tuition cost is outrageous. So I'm all for education, but it's at what cost? I don't know.
I hear you. Although I wouldn't even call that education. Again, at least once I got my job in MBA program, I skipped about as many classes as possible the second year, which I think helped a lot. And I picked some softball ones to take, plus it was pass fail. And ironically, I would play online poker in those classes. And when I did my interview with Susquehanna, that I listed poker was actually a big drawing point to them. So kids drop out of socialist leftist colleges as quickly as possible. Parents, if you need help, someone with an MBA to talk your children out of leftist colleges or MBA programs, I do offer that service. Couple quick ones, David. Someone asked, in terms of a percentage of how much in bullion, how much in mining shares, any tip or guideline you can give quick for that?
Yeah, we actually, when you're a member of the premium service, how to use the Morgan report, I go through that. Basically, the older you are, the more you want to have metal. The younger you are, the more exposure you can have to equities.
Right. Well, I like that. Nice, quick answer there. And there's the link for the Morgan report. Chris Marchese, let's say silver went to $50 by the end of the year, the end of next year. Is there a particular type of stock you'd like to own? Do you want the junior miners, the producers, or for folks who are seeing a big move in our future, is there a type that they might want to focus on?
So quality juniors will obviously perform the best, especially if they, during the run-up, they also make a big discovery. Those are much more difficult to find. But, there's stalwarts that will do very well. Your First Majestics, your Pan Americans, your MAG, I think, is going to be a stalwart if it doesn't get acquired. So, those type of companies, or like SilverCrest, which, they're about to start construction, building the mine. So it's going to get revalued. And with a higher silver price, those cash flows will just be amazing. Yeah, you really can't go wrong. I mean, I hate to say this, but, when the silver price or gold price goes up very substantially, usually the more marginal companies outperform. That's not something you want to strive for, having the most marginal companies. You want to have the best in show, but having some exposure to some more speculative, some more marginal companies should get you a very robust return.
That's a great point. Maybe we can touch on that in some of the talks later throughout the day, because, if you did have silver go to 50, I mean, if someone has a $25 cost of production, they stand to gain more than, SilverCrest that has $5 or $6 cost of production. Of course, there's obviously risk if the price goes down. And so, again, different stocks for all situations, which, again, I'm grateful for all you guys joining me. Two last quick ones, two last quick ones. Maybe the first one, you can give just one sentence. When people are looking at different mining stocks, you guys talked about the management, certainly a key variable. But aside from that, in a sentence, what's something, if you're looking at 5 or 10 stocks, what's something that is a key variable for people to look at? David, can you go first on that one?
Well, I'll just qualify it by saying the juniors, you've got to know what their treasury looks like and their burn rate.
Makes a lot of sense. Chris?
Insider ownership and quality of assets.
What was the first part of that? Insider
ownership. So you want to make sure, especially if it's like a $50 to $100 million junior, you want management to have a big chunk. And if it's a $200, $300, $400, $500 million company and they have 3%, 4%, 5%, that's excellent. And if there's other strategic investors like Eric Sprott, certain funds that are very good, that type of thing.
And Peter?
I mean, I can't add much more to those key items except share structures is key. This is a capital-intensive business, and a lot of these companies need to raise cash constantly. So you want to make sure you don't get too diluted in these companies, but that's becoming less and less of a risk now as the prices start to take off. So that's great to see.
That makes sense. And last one, when we come back for SilverFest 2021, a year from now, what is the price of silver? David.
Should give me an easier question.
All right, David.
I'll say a year from now it'll be above 50.
Say that again?
I say it'll be above 50.
Above 50. Chris?
I think it'll break 50, so I'll say 65. Pretty aggressive, but why not?
I'll go for $66.
Oh, you're like that guy on The Price is Right who just sideswiped the other guy. That's your own partner there, but I guess you guys have the board covered. Gentlemen, David Morgan of the Morgan Report, Chris Marchese, and Peter Spina of GoldSeek and SilverSeek.com. I can't thank you enough for joining me here and really bringing your knowledge, expertise, and all of your effort and energy that I know people are so happy to get access to. So thank you all. We're going to hop over to the Dolly Varden silver booth now to give away some silver, believe it or not. If either of you have some time and would like to come in there and interact with the audience, please come and join me. You have somewhere else to head off to, completely understand that as well. And just again want to say thank you, and this was awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. And folks, come win some silver with Dolly Varden. Come meet Sean, a great mining company I think you'll be hearing more about, and I will be there in about 2 minutes.